welcome back to Nails Before Films. As I mentioned in my Deadpool and Wolverine review, the link for that is in the description in the top right corner now. I will be reviewing the movies referenced in Deadpool and Wolverine, starting with the three Blade movies. I had only watched Blade 1 and 2 before seeing Deadpool and Wolverine, so I rewatched both of those and watched Blade Trinity for the sake of this review. And man, the Blade movies are something else, especially for its time. Now, I know nothing about Blade in the comics, so I can't tell if the adaptation is faithful or not. I can only review the movies on their own. Let's start with Blade. Blade is unconventional to say the least. It's a decent attempt at a dark superhero movie. The story is nothing complicated, just a half vampire killing vampires. However, as the story goes on, it becomes so edgy that I find it funny. One of the vampires, Deacon Frost, wants to summon a blood god and conquer humanity. Yes, a blood god. It's as stupid as it sounds. But somehow it works. Don't get me wrong, the whole ritual and blood god thing is so edgy that it's hilarious, but the movie is about freaking vampires, so the idea of a vampire Armageddon isn't all that bizarre. The plot is predictable too. From the beginning of the movie, you already know that Blade's mom is going to be alive and she's going to be a vampire. And it's really weird how she gets sexual with her son. The whole movie is excessively sexual for no reason. It starts with a freaking vampire orgy nightclub, and when the doctor offers her blood to help Blade, she's like, "Don't stop," as Blade sucks her. I was like, why does this need to be so erotic? Blade feels like a teenager's idea of edginess. You've got vampires, violence, and it's excessively sexual. Also, the ending is anticlimactic. The fight between Blade and Blood God Frost is really underwhelming, and he just defeats him with EDTA. I thought that they would use the cure to defeat him. That was why they kept mentioning that Frost was turned. Doesn't it make more sense to use the cure on him and turn him back into a human? Since Frost is so proud of being a vampire, wouldn't it be more satisfying to turn him back into a weak human before killing him? The story is okay for a movie focusing more on actions and aesthetics, but it's definitely not very good. Speaking of the actions and aesthetics, Blade is definitely unique in that regard. The special effects are so funny. I know that's possibly what they could do at the time, but it's so hilarious. There are vampire skeletons with wings flying around in this movie, and yes, it's as goofy as it sounds. And the way the vampires turn into ashes isn't that good either, but I suppose it was acceptable in 1998. I'm also not a fan of the editing. The rapid cuts are really annoying in my opinion, but other than that, the actions are amazing. Of course, the dramatic pauses and poses are a bit funny, but as a fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I'm used to that. And it gives Blade a graphic novel feel, which is great in an adaptation. The action is memorable too. The film sets its tone with the first fight at the nightclub. It's just so violent, fast-paced, and engaging. I absolutely love the different weapons Blade uses to slay vampires. The variety keeps the fights entertaining. Although the movie isn't exactly gory, the vampires turn to ashes after all, it certainly doesn't shy away from violence. The film really establishes Blade as more of an anti-hero who would do anything to kill vampires. And it's a pretty cool concept. I also love Blade's design, from the trench coat to the sunglasses. Blade is so slick in live action. Personality-wise, I like how stoic and cynical Blade is. When the doctor accuses him of using her as bait, his reaction is, "Get over it." Blade is certainly a very cool character, and Wesley Snipes' portrayal of him is great. I really like how simple Blade is. He doesn't want to save the world or be a hero, he just hates vampires and wants to kill all of them. Besides Blade, I also like Whistler a lot. Both he and Blade are no-nonsense men who just care about killing vampires, but it's also shown in the film that they still have soft spots and can't leave people who need help. It's pretty sad when Whistler dies and a stoic man like Blade gets visually affected by it. It really shows that underneath the masculinity, both of them are sympathetic inside. As for the doctor, I actually don't remember her name. She's an okay character, she's pretty useful, but I will say that it's convenient that she just comes up with a vampire cure and it's never used again. When Whistler was going to kill himself, I was like, wait a minute, why not use the cure? Even if they don't have it at the moment, why not inject him with garlic essence and cure him once Blade gets the doctor back? Surely, if it worked on her, it's worth trying on Whistler. The bad guy Frost is okay too. He looks like the type teenage girls will like. There's nothing complicated about him, which is pretty much expected for a movie about a half vampire killing vampires, but he is somewhat charismatic. Anyway, the actors are a huge reason why the movie works despite how absurd it is. The actors gives us believable performances, which is part of the reason why audiences can accept the bizarre world of Blade. Next, we have Blade 2, which is also a decent dark superhero movie. It inherited the dark, edgy grittiness of the first movie, and I personally like the story of Blade 2 more. The conflict is more interesting this time. There's a new type of vampire reapers that feeds on vampires. Blade agrees to help vampires hunt down these reapers, only to be betrayed later and learn that the reapers are the result of a failed genetic experiment to make vampires more powerful. Most of the vampires are still the bad guys in this movie, but some of them are neutral. They can't help being born a vampire, so they accept who they are. Some characters are more complex than in the first movie, namely Nisa and the villain Nomak. Despite being a vampire, Nisa is very honorable and shows that even vampires have dignity, which is demonstrated through her decision to betray her father. I also like her ending a lot. She would rather die a vampire than become a reaper, similar to how Whistler would rather kill himself as a human than turn into a vampire in the first movie. It shows that humans and vampires aren't that different after all. It's pretty romantic that her dying wish is to see the sun. It really makes her more human. The same goes for Nomak. His hatred toward vampire is understandable, and it's much easier to sympathize with him than Frost. His ending is also much better than Frost's. After putting up a good fight with Blade, he kills himself to end his suffering. It's much more poetic than Frost exploding. Now, the story isn't great by any means. Most of the other vampires are one-dimensional characters just to fight and get killed. Blade is pretty much the same as the last movie, but I personally find Blade 2 to be more interesting story-wise. However, I don't really like the decision to bring back Whistler. Don't get me wrong, I like Whistler, he's my favorite character from Blade, but his death is a really emotional moment in the first movie, and I don't like how it's undone immediately at the start of Blade 2. But it's expected, especially for a franchise about vampires, so I'm not that upset about it either. That being said, I will say Blade 2 isn't as memorable as Blade because we've already seen the dark, gritty world of Blade. Blade 2 keeps the unique aesthetic of Blade, but that's pretty much it. It's still very good, but because you expect it, there's nothing that can awe the audience like the first movie. However, the actions are a bit different in Blade 2. The dramatic pulses and poses are still there, but the actions in Blade 2 have an even stronger anime feel than Blade, especially the final fight between Blade and Nomak. The movements are really exaggerated and a bit CGI heavy. Personally, I think it's fine. I don't like how much CGI is used, but as an anime fan, I get the style they're going for. If you're not an anime fan, the fights will probably be too over the top for you. Anyway, I think they're fine and I appreciate Blade 2 trying something else while preserving the aesthetic of the first movie. Overall, I think Blade 2 is also an entertaining movie. It's not definitively better than Blade, but certainly not worse in any way. Lastly, we have Blade Trinity, which is without a doubt the worst of the three movies. If you think the stories for the first two Blade movies are stupid, this one is even worse. This time, instead of summoning a blood god, the vampires awaken Dracula and call him Drake. Yes, Dracula is Drake in this movie. Anyway, the vampires set Blade up to kill a familiar so that humans will see him as a criminal and hunt him down. Whistler is killed when their hideout is swatted by the FBI and Blade is captured. He's later rescued by the Night Stalkers, a group of individuals dedicated to killing vampires. The Night Stalkers have come up with a virus that can kill vampires, but they need Drake's blood to make him more effective. Drake then kills most of the Night Stalkers and captures Ryan Reynolds and a little girl. Blade and Whistler's daughter then finds the vampires and manages to stab Drake with the virus, effectively killing him and all nearby vampires. If you think the story sounds unfocused and boring, it is unfocused and boring. The story is all over the place, and there are too many parties involved. We have the vampires, Dracula, the FBI, the Night Stalkers, and a weird subplot about vampires farming humans for blood. The story just doesn't make sense. So the vampires revive Dracula because they believe he can cure them of their weaknesses, but they don't try to do that at all. The whole human blood farm also came out of nowhere, and it ended as soon as it started. The whole thing is incoherent, and the constant cuts don't help. This movie also has too many montages, and it's just padding. The whole movie feels like a chore. Even the fights aren't as exhilarating as the first two movies. You can feel that even the staff wants to get over it, which is understandable if the production is really as troubled as the rumors. As I mentioned before, a huge reason why the first movie worked despite how absurd the concept was is because of the cast. But for Blade Trinity, you can really tell that they just want to finish the movie, and the result is a mediocre film. The supporting characters do their best, and I actually think Whistler's daughter and Ryan Reynolds are likable, but there's only so much they can do for a mediocre film like Blade Trinity. It doesn't help that the other characters are really bland. All of the other Night Stalkers are just generic tag guys and some random dude. The vampires are not better. The main female vampire is really annoying and the others are forgettable. The Blood Pack from Blade 2 has a way more memorable and interesting assortment of vampires. Drake is fine. I think it's interesting that he thinks both humans and vampires are inferior, and how he respects Blade at the end gives him a bit more character than Frost. Then again, it's not enough to salvage this boring movie, especially when Blade is pretty out of character. I don't think Blade Trinity is terrible, it's just bland and copy-pastes elements from the first two movies. Instead of a blood god, there's Dracula. And instead of the Blood Pack, there are the Night Stalkers. There's really nothing new in Blade Trinity. You don't really feel excited watching it. Just, yep, it's another Blade movie, alright. Another thing that bugs me is the visuals. Somehow, despite coming out in 2004, Blade Trinity looks like a film from the 80s and not in a good way. The visuals somehow look worse than Blade, which came out 8 years before Trinity. The gadgets are pretty cool, but it's expected for a Blade film and not enough to make it interesting. Overall, Blade Trinity is just boring. It's not hilariously bad, just mediocre. That's about it for my thoughts on the three Blade movies. Despite being weaker when it comes to writing, they are certainly unique in styles and actions. The first two are entertaining movies that even people who know nothing about Blade can enjoy. As for the third one, I think most people would agree that it's not very good. I've heard that Marvel is having trouble coming up with a Blade movie, which is weird. It's a guy killing vampires. It's not complicated. Everybody loves the opening fight of Blade. Just do something like that. Hope you guys like my review and nails. I tried to do vampire nails. These two are supposed to be vampire fangs with blood. And these two are Blade's blade. And this is half of his face. I'm not proud of this set, but I don't like the Blade movies enough to come up with better designs. As always, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment, share, do what you want. Follow me on other social media if you like. Links are in the description. Keep nailing it and get over it, people.